Hello, my name is Linda, and I'm 42 years old. Life had an important lesson to teach me, and I learned it the hard way. It all started with my husband, Ron. I had met Ron through a dating app. He hadn't mentioned that he had kids until we were dating for a solid 6 months. By then, I was madly in love with him. He was the perfect example of my dream man. He was handsome and smart. He carried himself well and had a great work ethic. He was also very financially stable. When I found out that he had kids, I will admit I was mad. I was adamant on my dating profile that I didn't want to date anyone with kids. But he still chose to waste my time and toy with my feelings. I ended up not contacting him for a good month. Ron kept trying to reach out to me, but I just couldn't bring myself to go back to him just yet. It sucked for a long while. I couldn't get him off my mind. Just think about it. You find the person you have always dreamed of, but there was this one aspect that you just couldn't get over. This one aspect was such a deal breaker. Every time I picked up my phone to text him we were over, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I gave it another month, and my feelings began to get a little clearer to me. The more I thought about it, the more I found myself being able to accept being with Ron despite the fact that he had kids. I practically raised my siblings, since my parents weren't great at parenting and my siblings turned out to be wonderful people, so I knew I would be a great mom. The biggest issue I had with Ron was that he lied. When I love someone deeply, there's no way in hell I could ever hide something, especially something this big from them. But Ron had done it with such ease that it was scary to think just what else he could hide from me. During those 2 months of self-reflection, Ron had constantly, every single day, never failed to call and text me. I guess he loved me just as much as I loved him. Once I realized that I was okay with him having kids, I figured that I could talk to him about his lying. Leaving him because he lied to me was not a hill I was willing to die on. In hindsight, it should have been, because that was what came back to bite me in the butt. Anyway, one weekend when he called me, I picked up the phone. I could hear the surprise and excitement in his voice. He asked me if I was doing okay, and I said that I was. Although, I will admit, I was still pretty cautious about talking to him. I didn't want him to think that everything was okay just because I sounded normal. Before I could even say anything, he was the one to ask me if we could meet up and talk about everything that had happened. He begged me to just give him an hour, and I agreed. We met up at this pretty busy cafe that was the midpoint between both of our places. When I walked into the cafe, I saw Ron sitting at a table, looking nervous. If I'm being completely honest, my heart melted at the sight of him. He still looked so handsome, and the fact that he seemed nervous only made me feel a lot better. It showed me that he actually cared about us, and that he wanted us to work.
Hey Lynn, how are you doing?
I could be better. What about you?
Not good. I miss you, Lynn.
Well, you did hide something that was pretty big. Not to mention something that you knew was a big deal breaker for me.
I know, but you were just so perfect and I didn't want to lose you. Do you know how hard it is to date someone when you have kids?
I don't doubt that it's hard, but you have to understand that hiding it from someone you're trying to pursue a long-term relationship with isn't really the best thing. The only reason I'm back here is because I love you a little too much to just let you go.
I know. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to look past that.
Nuh-uh. Hold on. I never said I was looking past it. What you did was very messed up. And you know what makes it even more messed up? How easily you lied and hid it from me. Just how easy was it for you to lie?
It wasn't. Every day I wanted to tell you, but I didn't want to lose you.
And you thought lying to me would keep me around? Ron, you're hearing yourself talk, right? That sounds so incredibly stupid.
I know. I wasn't really thinking straight because I had been trying to find a good partner for the past 3 years. And I guess the second I found the perfect match, I just wanted it to last perfectly for as long as I could make it last.
I want to continue being mad at you, but I guess I can empathize with you.
I don't deserve someone like you.
You don't. I'm only staying on 3 conditions. The first is that you never, ever lie to me again, especially about something as significant as this. I swear to God, if you do it again, I will leave you.
Of course, I promise that. I'll never do it again.
What's the second condition? I want you to introduce your kids and me to each other whenever you're comfortable.
Of course, darling. I really think you guys will get along well. And the third thing?
I want you to tell me all about your kids and everything related to them. That's when I saw Ron's eyes light up with excitement for the first time in a long time. He began to share his story with me. Began telling me that he had been in a relationship with his ex-girlfriend, Kylie, since they were 15. They only started sleeping together when they were 17. And even though they were careful, she still ended up getting pregnant. Thankfully, Ron had supportive parents. Well, at least they gave him the bare minimum support. They provided him with the finances, but did not help raise a kid, as they believed that if he was adult enough to have a kid, then he could take care of it. His girlfriend's parents, however, had not been supportive at all. They kept trying to convince her to abort the child, but she didn't want to. Ron's parents allowed both of them to stay in their house in the basement, provided they paid them some for rent. Ron didn't mind because he felt it was pretty fair. Ron took care of Kylie while she was pregnant and worked to support them. Then finally they had their first child, a son named Marcus. Ron told me it was pretty hard to juggle school, work, and raising a child. But he and Kylie made it somehow. When they both graduated high school and were in their second year of college, they got pregnant again. They were 19 at this point. Once again, Kylie didn't want to give her baby up. This time, Ron's parents weren't as supportive. They had gotten tired of Ron's responsibility. And not to mention, the sounds of a baby crying were not fun to live with. So to live with 2 babies under 2 would have been a nightmare for them. Instead, they helped Ron and Kylie get an apartment, which Ron was responsible for financing until Kylie could get back on her feet. When the time came, Kylie gave birth to their beautiful daughter Ingrid. Once they were settled in their home after the birth of their second child, they realized why their parents wanted them out. It was a hellish experience to care for 2 babies. There was never any sleep because one of them was always crying. Judging their studies and jobs on top of all the babies was beyond exhausting. It was because of all the stress that Kylie decided to dip from their lives just 7 months after giving birth to Ingrid. Ron told me that they had been arguing for a while because they were so irritable from lack of sleep. And one day it got too much for Kylie, and she admitted that she was cheating on him. That pretty much broke the relationship. Kylie just left him and never came back. Ron tried contacting her and kept trying to get her to come back, but she would always tell him that she didn't want the kids anymore. She did pay a small amount as child support every once in a while, but that was very random. Ron had to work really hard to make sure he and his kids survived. His mom had felt sympathetic towards him, so she offered to take care of the newborn while Ron attended college. Once Ron graduated, he was able to land a good job. He was very skilled with his job, so it got him a huge promotion, which was how he and his kids could live a more comfortable life right now.
So yeah, it's been about 3.5 years since Kylie left. It's been a struggle.
I can't believe you've been hiding this much from me. My God, I'm sorry you had to go through all of this.
I really am sorry that I hid it from you. It was just a lot, as you can tell. And I guess I also wanted to be sure that you would be comfortable with knowing about this aspect of my life.
I love you for who you are. Your past will never define you, so of course I'd have been more than open to listening about it.
I know. I mean, I think about 1.5 years after Kylie left, the loneliness began to settle in. I started going on dates, but every single time I mentioned that I had kids, the women dipped, which, I mean, I totally get. If the roles were reversed, I wouldn't want to be with a woman who had children too.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I'll forgive you for everything, but you have to be patient with me as I sort through everything I learned today.
Of course. I've waited 2 whole months for you. I don't mind waiting a little more as long as I get to be with you.
I was honestly thrown for a loop after I found out about Ron's backstory. That was the last thing I had expected to find out. My resolve to be angry at him was dissolved completely because he really was a man who went through hell and back. And he was still raising his kids. Over the next week, I went back to slowly spending time with Ron again. We became a lot closer and it felt like we were meant to be. About 3 months after we made up, Ron decided that he wanted to introduce me to his kids. At that time, Marcus and Ingrid were about 5 and 3 respectively. They were cute kids. Marcus definitely looked like a clone of Ron, and honestly, a part of me wanted to be there to see what the kid would look like when he was all grown up. The kids were also really friendly, and I got along with them very well. Ron also introduced me to his parents, who also approved of me. I was glad that Ron and I were finally the couple I had always wanted us to be. At the start of next year, Ron proposed to me. In his little speech, he told me that he didn't want to wait to ask me to marry him because he already knew that I was the one for him. Obviously, I felt the same way, so we got married. Our wedding was a small and elegant one. Very few people were there, but the kids were our ring bearers, and it was honestly super adorable. I got to meet Kylie too. Ron had thought that it would be great to have Kylie there, because she would at least get to see the kids. I didn't think it was the best idea, but at the end of the day, it was his wedding just as much as it was mine. For the first 2 years, the kids were actually pretty easy to take care of, mostly because Ron took care of them a lot. He made sure to always be there and be the best father he could. But after a while, I began to notice him slacking off. I found myself being responsible for everything. I was the one who made sure the kids went to school on time, attended their extracurriculars, and did their homework. I was the one waking up early while Ron slept in. On the weekend, Ron would always disappear to meet with his friends. I didn't mind for a while because I thought that Ron had spent a good portion of his young life taking care of his kids. He didn't really get the chance to live his life, so I let him do what he wanted to do, and I made sure to always give the kids the best that I could. Since I was the one who was raising them now, I saw them as my own children. So one night, after I put the kids to bed, I asked Ron if it was possible for me to adopt Marcus and Ingrid. So, I've been thinking about something for a while, and I wanted to run it by you.
Yeah? What's up?
I've been raising these kids for 3 years now? And I've come to see them like my own, so I was wondering if maybe you would be okay with me adopting them?
Absolutely not.
What? Why?
I really appreciate that you consider my kids like your own, but their mother is still in their lives, and I don't want that taken away from them.
Okay, but Kylie literally never sees them unless we beg her to. I'm sure she'd be more than happy to waive her parental rights.
I don't feel comfortable in making that decision while their mother is still there. If in the future they decide that they want you to adopt them, then you can. I don't want to hear anything more about this, okay?
I will admit that I was very disappointed, and a part of me wanted to start a fight with him, but at the same time, I guess I could see where he was coming from. The kids still called me my name, and while they weren't necessarily hard to deal with, they also never actually bonded with me. Still, I let it go and just hoped that the kids would come to realize who put the most amount of work into raising them and maybe ask me to adopt them. Unfortunately, that never happened. 2 things happened after that conversation. The first one was that Ron became even more absent. He was constantly out and about doing God knows what. I feel like I was living with a roommate rather than my husband. I tried to talk to him about it, but the conversation never seemed to go anywhere. Some days, I just wanted to leave. But I only stayed because of the kids. Ron had checked out of being a present father so long ago that I was scared that if I left, he would remain the same and that would ruin the children. The second thing that happened gradually over the span of a couple of years. I began to notice Marcus and Ingrid becoming distant from me. They barely ever spoke to me, and whenever they did, it was because they needed me to do something for them. For some reason, it didn't even click in my head that I was literally being used. There was a time when the kids and I were really close, but suddenly that changed. No matter what I tried, they remained that way. I went above and beyond for them. I'm not even lying. I worked hard and saved up for months so I could gift Marcus his first car on his 16th birthday. You know what I got in return? A half-hearted thanks. I was the one that took them on all these little vacations, and yet not once did I get any form of gratitude or acknowledgement for it. Hell, I spent more time with them than Ron had, yet the kids always spoke so highly of Ron while I got nothing. I don't if by the time self-esteem was non-existent because I continued to take care of them. When Ingrid turned 18, I decided to sit her and Marcus down and ask them if they would be open to me adopting them. After all, I had been the one who raised them for the past almost 2 decades. Let me just say that you guys are absolutely free to say no to what I'm about to ask you, because it's a pretty big ask. What is it? I had this conversation with your dad many, many years ago, and he told me to ask you guys when you were all grown up. So I decided to ask you about it now. How would you feel about me adopting you guys?
I don't know about that.
I don't mean to sound like this, but why? Mom's still there for us, and we consider her to be our mom.
It just feels wrong. I'm sorry, Linda.
It's okay. Could you maybe just think it over? Please just remember that I was the one who was a part of the majority of your lives. Take that into consideration, okay? Sure, I guess. I was heartbroken. I didn't know what more I could do for these kids. I gave my all to them, and they still referred to their absent mother as Mom, and even considered her more of a mother than me. It felt like a knife to my chest. I couldn't even talk to Ron about it because I had a sneaking suspicion that he would be happy that the kids said no to me. I gave them the time they wanted to think about it. I kept asking them once every few months, and they always answered my questions. It got to a point where both of them actively avoided being around me when Ron wasn't around, which he rarely was, so I wasn't even talking to them. Before I knew it, 5 years had passed. I was wallowing in misery. One day, when Ron told me that he and the kids would be going over to Kylie's for lunch, I lost my cool and lashed out at him. Do I even mean anything to you guys?
Don't be so dramatic, Lynn.
I'm not being dramatic. I've raised these kids for 21 whole years, and not once have I gotten a shroud of acknowledgement for everything or even a small thank you. Meanwhile, Kylie, who I can swear I've only seen maybe 10 times in the past 21 years, gets the status of being the kid's mother.
I told you it was their decision to make.
I doubt these kids didn't see everything I did for them. I spent more time with them than you did these past years. You need to be honest with me. Have you been telling them things about me?
No. Now drop it.
No, I will not drop it, because you only want to drop topics when you know you're hiding something.
Look, I just made sure that the kids always remembered who their mother was.
That's fine. I just wanted some respect from the woman who single-handedly raised them.
When will you ever let go of the fact that you are not their mother? Stop pushing it and drop this topic now.
You know what? I'm done. You want me to drop it? Fine. But I'm dropping you along with it. With that, I stormed out of the house. At that moment, it became very clear to me that Ron only got with me so he didn't have to raise the kids by himself. He set me up and watched me fall without feeling an ounce of guilt. I knew I needed to leave him, and that's exactly what I did. I got in the car, drove to the nearest lawyer's office, and filed for divorce. I wanted nothing to do with him or his kids. They could all try to play happy family with Kylie. I wanted to see how that would play out. I thought that it would be heartbreaking and devastating, but actually, it was freeing. I didn't realize how trapped I was until I left Ron. It felt like I was finally alive again. Ron signed the divorce papers without any protests, and that did hurt, only because it confirmed what I had realized. The next few years were the best years of my life. I was finally living for myself. I was taking care of myself for the first time instead of taking care of others. Neither Ron nor his kids contacted me, and while it did make me upset, I learned to be okay with it. And then one day, Ron called me.
Hey, Linda. How are you?
What do you want?
I just wanted to tell you that the kids are getting married soon.
That's nice.
Yeah, so I recklessly spent a lot of money and now I can't help fund them. So could you help them out?
Excuse me? Why should I?
Because you're their mother? And it's your duty to support your kids?
Last time I checked, I was most definitely not their mother.
How can you say that you aren't their mother when you raised them?
I did say that to you before, but it didn't matter then, so it doesn't matter now.
You're a pathetic mother.
I don't know where you got this audacity from, but take it right back with you. I want none of it. Goodbye. I felt this sense of accomplishment after I hung up the phone on him. It felt like I had won for the first time in a long, long while. I stood up for myself and didn't let him or his kids walk all over me. As for the weddings, I think both of them had to postpone it till further. I didn't care to find out more about it. Right now, I am happy I'm living for myself. It took a long time for me to learn to stand up for myself, but learning in general is a win, regardless of age.